Samantha never thought she'd be on a blind date, especially not one set up by a friend who promised it would change her life. She was a waitress, scraping by in a small apartment with peeling paint and too many bills piling up. She had dreams of something better, but reality kept her tethered to the ground. When she walked into the upscale restaurant, she felt out of place, surrounded by people who seemed to have it all. Her date, James, was nothing like the men she was used to. Tall, handsome, dressed impeccably in a suit that screamed wealth. He had the kind of smile that could melt anyone's doubts. When he stood to greet her, she felt an unexpected flutter of nerves in her stomach. He seemed kind, attentive, as if he genuinely cared about what she had to say. As the evening went on, Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, though. He was too perfect, too polished, almost as if he'd rehearsed this entire evening. They spoke about everything: his childhood in an affluent family, her struggles to make ends meet. But there was one thing James never mentioned: why he was really here, sitting across from her. Samantha noticed how his gaze lingered on her, but something in his eyes seemed cold, like he was observing her, not just listening. After dinner, James suggested a walk along the riverside. The city lights reflected off the water, and for a brief moment, Samantha allowed herself to forget about her worries. But as they strolled through the quiet path, James stopped abruptly. "Samantha," he began, his voice low, "there's something I need to tell you. I wasn't being completely honest with you tonight." Her heart skipped a beat. What was he talking about? James took a deep breath, his next words hitting her like a ton of bricks. "I wasn't just looking for a date," he confessed. "I'm part of a charity organization, and we're looking for someone who embodies honesty, hard work, and dedication. Someone who can relate to our cause. I was sent to see if you fit the profile." Samantha froze. The warmth she had felt earlier faded into confusion and hurt. Was this all just a test? All her life she'd been judged for not having enough, for struggling to survive. And now it felt like she was being used, a mere project to be assessed. She fought back tears, but her voice trembled. "So, that's it? I was just an experiment for your charity?" James seemed to hesitate, as if his words weren't what he wanted to say. But the damage was done. She turned away, trying to hide her tears, but the shame was already eating at her. As she walked away from the man who had promised an evening of connection, she couldn't help but wonder how someone who seemed so perfect could leave her feeling so empty. The next few days were a blur for Samantha. She couldn't shake the memory of James's words, how easily he had discarded her once his mission was over. The hurt lingered, but so did the anger. She had spent years working hard to survive, and now she felt like a pawn in someone else's game. The truth about why he had chosen her gnawed at her, and a part of her hated herself for even believing he might have been different. At work, Samantha tried to keep her head down. The busy restaurant was her refuge, where she could focus on taking orders, serving food, and escaping the overwhelming thoughts of her failed blind date. But nothing could distract her from the sting of rejection. Her friends kept asking how the date went, and she lied. She didn't want to admit the truth, how deeply she'd been hurt, how embarrassed she felt. It was easier to pretend everything was fine. That night, as she sat in her cramped apartment, staring at the unpaid bills, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. Samantha's heart skipped a beat, but she almost didn't want to open it. She had been avoiding the thought of James, but her curiosity got the best of her. When she saw his name, her stomach twisted. "I'm sorry, Samantha. I should have been honest with you from the start. I've realized I've made a mistake, and I want to make it right. Can we talk?" Her hands trembled as she read the message. What did he want now? Was this some sort of pity apology? She didn't know if she should be angry or curious. She had been let down once. She wasn't sure she could let herself get hurt again. But the message lingered in her mind, and for some reason, she felt a part of her still wanted to understand. Maybe it was the hope that things could be different, that maybe James wasn't as cold-hearted as he seemed. So against her better judgment, she replied, "Fine, we can talk." They arranged to meet at a cafe the following afternoon. Samantha didn't know what to expect. Was he going to try to explain himself? Would he ask for forgiveness? Or would this just be another attempt to manipulate her? to get her to do what he wanted. When she arrived at the cafe, James was already sitting at a table, looking more nervous than she had ever seen him. The suave, confident man from the date was gone, replaced by someone who seemed unsure, almost broken. Samantha sat down across from him, arms crossed, her eyes sharp. "I owe you an explanation," James said quietly, his gaze never quite meeting hers. "The truth is, I'm not a part of any charity. That was a lie. I'm not a good man, Samantha." Her heart raced as he continued. "I've been using people for a long time, manipulating them to get what I want, and I thought I could do the same with you. But after the way you reacted, I realized I was wrong. I never meant to hurt you. I wanted to get to know you, but I didn't know how." Samantha sat back, stunned by his admission. She didn't know whether to feel sorry for him or angry. He had played her, made her feel like a fool, and now he was confessing like it would somehow make everything okay. "Why should I believe anything you say?" she asked, her voice shaking. "You've already shown me who you are." "I know," he whispered, "and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to understand that I'm trying to change. I want to do better, to be better. And I know I don't deserve it, but I was hoping you could give me a chance, not for charity, but for me." His words hung in the air, and Samantha felt a wave of conflicting emotions. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that people could change. But how could she ever trust someone who had hurt her so deeply? The days after their conversation felt like a whirlwind. Samantha tried to push the memory of James's apology aside, but it lingered in the back of her mind. She couldn't stop thinking about what he had said, about wanting to change, about how he'd been using people. Could he really change? Or was he just another person trying to escape the consequences of his actions? Her friends noticed the shift in her mood. They had always seen her as the strong one, the one who kept a smile on her face no matter what. But lately, Samantha was quieter, distant, and they could tell something was weighing heavily on her heart. She had always been afraid of being judged, afraid of showing vulnerability, but now it felt impossible to hide the pain inside. One evening, as she sat at home, sipping her coffee, her phone buzzed again. It was another message from James. This time, there was no apology, no explanation, just one simple question. "Can we meet again? I need to show you something." Samantha stared at the message for a long time, her mind racing. Was he playing some kind of game? Or was this the moment he would prove himself to be genuine? She didn't know what to expect, but there was something in his words that made her feel like this could be different. It was a risk, but was it a risk worth taking? Against her better judgment, she agreed to meet him. They arranged to meet at the same cafe where they had talked before. This time, Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. She wasn't sure if it would be for better or worse, but she knew it would be significant. When she arrived, James was waiting for her, a serious expression on his face. There was something different about him now. He didn't look like the man who had tried to manipulate her. Instead, he seemed uncertain, almost afraid. Samantha felt a surge of emotion rise within her. She didn't know whether it was anger or sympathy, but something inside her was shifting. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice soft but steady. "I know I've messed up, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to see the truth." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. With trembling hands, he handed it to her. "This is the real reason I wanted to meet you," he continued. "It's not just about what I've done. It's about who I am." Samantha hesitated for a moment before opening the envelope. Inside was a set of papers, documents, photographs, and a letter. Her heart raced as she began to scan the papers, but the truth that unfolded before her eyes was far more than she could have imagined. The photographs were of James, but not as she had known him. They were from a different life, one that seemed disconnected from the polished, wealthy man she had met. The letter was from his family, written years ago, disowning him after he had betrayed them in a business deal that left many people in financial ruin. The truth hit her like a punch in the stomach. James wasn't just someone who had lied to her for a date. He had a history of betrayal, of hurting people to climb the social ladder, and now he was asking her for forgiveness, for a second chance. Samantha's breath caught in her throat. Was this a plea for sympathy, or was he genuinely trying to show her the man he had been before all the wealth and power consumed him? She looked up at him, her eyes searching for something, anything, that could explain this sudden vulnerability. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, the weight of the moment sinking in. "You don't have to say anything," James replied quietly. "I don't expect forgiveness, Samantha. I just wanted you to know the truth. I've been living in the shadows of my past for so long, and I don't want that anymore. I want to change for myself, not for anyone else. I just thought maybe you could help me find redemption." The words hung in the air, and for the first time, Samantha saw something in James that wasn't just about manipulation or self-interest. There was pain there, real pain, the kind of pain that couldn't be erased with money or status. But could she trust him? Could she help him find redemption, or would she only be setting herself up for more heartbreak? Samantha couldn't shake the weight of James's confession. The papers, the photographs, the letter, everything had hit her like a freight train. She couldn't deny the depth of the betrayal he had caused, not just to her, but to the people who had trusted him. But as much as she wanted to walk away, something kept her rooted to the spot, something she couldn't explain. The following days were a blur. Samantha went through the motions of her daily life, but everything felt different. She found herself constantly thinking about James, his words, his past, and the truth he had shared with her. It wasn't just his apology that stuck with her. It was the vulnerability he had shown, the glimpse into the man beneath the facade of wealth and arrogance. She couldn't forget the pain in his eyes when he spoke about his family, the regret that seemed to echo through his voice. Her friends noticed the change too. They saw the sadness in her eyes, the hesitation in her actions. They told her she deserved better, that she shouldn't waste her time on someone like James. But Samantha couldn't help it. There was something about him, something raw and real, that made her believe maybe, just maybe, he wasn't beyond redemption. She didn't know if she could forgive him, but she felt drawn to him, like a magnet pulling her back, even though every part of her told her to run. One evening, as she was walking home from work, her phone buzzed again. It was another message from James. This time, there were no apologies, no explanations. Just two words. "I need you." Samantha stopped in her tracks, staring at the screen, her heart pounding in her chest. She had been trying to move on, to let go of the idea that she could somehow fix him. But this message, this simple plea, made her question everything. What did he need from her? Was he just asking for a second chance, or was this the beginning of something else? She didn't know if she was ready for it, but she couldn't ignore the pull. She replied, her fingers trembling as she typed, "Where are you?" They agreed to meet at a park near her apartment. When Samantha arrived, she found James standing by the swings, his back turned to her, staring into the distance. He looked different, almost like a man broken by his own actions, yet still searching for something to hold on to. "Samantha," he said softly without turning around, "I've been thinking a lot about what I've done, about everything I've put you through. I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I know that. But I need to tell you something." She walked toward him, her heart racing. She didn't know what he was going to say, but she could feel the gravity of the moment. There was a heavy silence between them before he finally spoke again, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't want to live this life anymore. I don't want to hide behind my wealth, my lies, my past. I want to be someone who deserves something real. And I know I don't deserve you, but I'm asking you, from the bottom of my heart, to give me a chance to prove that I can be a better man." Samantha's breath caught in her throat. She had never seen him like this, so vulnerable, so desperate. It was like everything he had built his life around was crumbling, and he was left standing there, with nothing but his own regret and the hope that she might believe in him again. Her mind raced. Was he telling the truth? Could he really change? Was this just another act, another part of the game he had been playing all along? She didn't know, but one thing was clear. His words, his pain, the rawness of the moment, it all felt too real to ignore. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she said, her voice shaking. "But I can't ignore the person standing in front of me now. You're not the man I thought you were, And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. James turned to face her, his eyes filled with something she couldn't quite place. Hope, desperation, fear. I understand. I know it's not easy, and I don't expect you to trust me. But I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. I'm asking for a chance. A real chance to show you who I can be. Samantha's heart swelled with emotion. She had no answers, no promises to make. But for the first time, she saw James as something more than just the man who had hurt her. She saw someone who was trying to change, someone who was willing to confront his past, no matter how painful it was. But the question remained, could she trust him? Could she give him a chance without setting herself up for more heartbreak? Samantha spent the next few days lost in thought. The meeting with James had shaken her more than she expected. His words echoed in her mind, and she couldn't escape the image of him standing there, vulnerable, asking for a chance. She had always prided herself on being strong, but now she found herself questioning everything she had believed about herself, about love, and about trust. Her friends continued to advise her to move on, to let go of someone who had caused her so much pain. But how could she? How could she ignore the raw, honest side of James that he had shown her? The truth was, she wasn't sure if she was making the right decision, but a part of her wanted to believe that people could change. She wanted to believe that love could overcome even the darkest of pasts. As days turned into weeks, Samantha and James began meeting more frequently. Their conversations were deeper now, more meaningful. James shared more about his past, the mistakes he had made, and the guilt that had eaten away at him for years. Samantha listened, not out of obligation, but because she felt that maybe, just maybe, he was being honest. One evening, as they sat in a quiet restaurant, James looked at her with a seriousness she had never seen before. "Samantha, I need to tell you something important," he began. "I've been working hard to make things right with my family, with the people I've hurt. But there's something I haven't shared with you yet, something I'm ashamed of." Samantha's heart raced. Could this be another lie? Another secret he was keeping from her? She tried to push the fear away, but it gnawed at her. James took a deep breath, his hands shaking as he placed them on the table. "I've been offered a business deal that could fix everything for me. Money, power, everything I've ever wanted. But it comes with a price. I have to betray the people who have been helping me to change. I have to choose between continuing down the path of redemption or falling back into the life I've always known." Samantha sat back, her mind spinning. This was the moment that would define everything. James was standing at a crossroads, and his decision would determine not only his future, but hers as well. She could see the conflict in his eyes, the struggle between the man he was becoming and the man he had been. She didn't know what he would choose, but she couldn't help but wonder if this would be the moment when everything would fall apart. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "This is your choice, James. But you need to understand that if you choose to betray the people who've been helping you, if you go back to the man you used to be, I won't be able to stay. I can't be with someone who chooses that life over everything else." James looked at her with a mixture of fear and resolve. "I don't want to go back to that life. I don't want to be the man I used to be. But I'm afraid that the temptation is too strong. What if I can't change? What if I fail?" Samantha reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "The question isn't whether you'll fail. The question is whether you're willing to try, to fight for the person you want to become. If you choose that life, then you're choosing to stay stuck in the past. But if you choose to move forward, no matter how hard it gets, I'll be here for you. I just need to know that you're making the choice for yourself, not because you think it's what I want." James stared at her, his eyes searching hers, and for a long moment, it felt like the world had stopped spinning. In that silence, something shifted. The weight of his decision felt heavier than ever before, and for the first time, James understood what it meant to truly change, to make a choice not based on what others expected, but on what he truly wanted for himself. After what felt like an eternity, he nodded slowly. "I'm going to make the right choice, for me and for us." Samantha felt a glimmer of hope spark inside her. She didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time in a long time, She believed that James was ready to change, ready to fight for something real. But as the night wore on, the question still lingered. Would he be able to follow through on his promise, or would he fall back into his old ways? The next few days were tense. James seemed determined, his every action marked by a new sense of purpose. But Samantha couldn't shake the lingering doubt. Could he really change? Could someone with a past as dark as his ever be trusted again? She wanted to believe in him, but a part of her was afraid of being hurt once more. James kept his word. He turned down the business deal, the one that could have secured him everything he had ever dreamed of. Instead, he focused on repairing his relationships, not just with Samantha, but with his family and the people he had wronged. The road was not easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when Samantha saw the strain in his eyes and she knew how hard it was for him to stay on the path of redemption. But he kept going, even when it seemed like everything was falling apart. Samantha watched him from a distance, her heart torn. She was proud of him, but the fear that he might slip back into his old ways never fully left her. There were days when she felt like she was walking on eggshells, unsure if she could trust him completely. Yet with every small victory, with every step he took toward redemption, a part of her began to heal. Then one evening, just as she was beginning to believe that James might be changing for good, he called her. His voice was different, strained, desperate. "Samantha, I need to talk to you. There's something I haven't told you, something that could change everything." Her heart sank. Was this the moment? Was he going to betray her once again? She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her mind racing with fear and doubt. She agreed to meet him, her hands trembling as she dialed the address. When she arrived, she found James standing outside, looking more tired and broken than she had ever seen him. His eyes were red-rimmed, his expression full of regret. "Samantha, I've been keeping something from you," he said, his voice cracking. "The business deal, the one I turned down, it wasn't just about money. There's something more. My father, he's been using me all along, manipulating me into taking the deal. He's threatened my family, my friends, everything I've worked for, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I should tell you or if I should just protect you from the truth." Samantha's mind reeled. James had been under pressure, not just from his past mistakes, but from the very people who had shaped him. She could see the pain in his eyes, the burden he had been carrying, and for the first time, she understood the full extent of the fight he was facing. "You should have told me sooner," she whispered, her heart breaking for him. "But I understand now. I can't imagine the weight of that choice, and I don't know what's next, but I do know this. If you keep fighting, if you keep being the man you've started to become, then I'll be here." James looked at her, his face filled with gratitude and relief. "Thank you. I don't deserve you, but I'll never stop trying to be worthy of you." Samantha took a deep breath, her heart still unsure, but her love for him undeniable. It wasn't easy. It never would be. But they had both learned that change didn't come overnight, and love didn't come with guarantees. It was messy, painful, and full of twists and turns. But maybe, just maybe, it was worth fighting for. As they stood there in the quiet of the night, Samantha knew one thing for sure. Their journey was far from over. It wasn't a fairy tale, and it certainly wasn't easy, but it was real. And sometimes that's all you could ask for.